Welcome into Obscurity. The case I'm sharing with you today has all the characteristics of an actual horror story. However, it is not some creepypasta or messed up script of a yet to be released movie. This stuff really happened. So, let me take you back to the year 2006. It is October 3rd at around 8 AM, and Joost Vastenhouw, a 22-year-old man from the Dutch city of Alphen aan den Rijn, just wakes up. His father, Jan Vastenhouw, is getting ready to leave for work. It seemed like a day just like any other. However, a few hours later, unbeknownst to them, all of that would change, dramatically. Joost Vastenhouw was not your average 22-year-old. His biological mother was a Spanish woman by the name of Isabel. After she went on a holiday to the Netherlands, she wound up pregnant, which came as a complete surprise to her. She decided she is not yet ready to be a mom. Back in Spain, doctors refused to perform an abortion. This resulted in her fleeing back to the Netherlands, a country with less severe abortion laws than Spain at the time, to abort the pregnancy. It was, however, too late. Joost Vastenhouw was born on the 26th of March 1984. When he is 4 months old, he is adopted by his adoption parents, Jan and Ans, who live in the city of Alphen aan den Rijn. He was raised in a very loving family, together with his foster sister, Noortje. Joost was always very happy as a kid, and liked by most people. He was popular among his peers, but he did get into a lot of arguments with his school teachers. When he is 11 years old, his parents file for divorce. Jan, his father, at the time was struggling with his sexuality, leading him to eventually come out as homosexual. This is what obviously led up to the divorce. After having to deal with his parents' divorce, Joost suffers another mental blow. His mom, Ans, who Joost was very close to, dies after being diagnosed with a terminal form of breast cancer. Joost is obviously devastated. Understandably, it affects his everyday life. Perhaps as a way to cope with the loss of his mother, he turns to drugs and alcohol, and he also racked up an extensive amount of debt. He also changes his physical appearance, sporting a ponytail, a long black leather jacket, and army boots. His friends still see him as a loyal friend. His neighbors, however, would later on describe him as the Gothic kid. Joost also takes an interest in right-wing extremism. He joins the supposedly fascist metal band Kalslagen as a bassist. Under a pseudonym, he and his bandmates, and members of the supposedly fascist movement Brigade M, do a tour through Europe to attend several Nazi-related festivals. His father later told reporters he was not aware of the extent of Joost's interest in right-wing ideology, stating, "I knew Joost hung around with right-wing people, but not to that extent. I let him go his way as long as he didn't cause any trouble. I thought that this was maybe a phase of his, just like his Gothic appearance." I really doubt whether he really was that deep into right-wing extremist ideology, but either way, I found that he had his right to his own political beliefs. After having dealt with his demons from the past, Joost seems to flourish. He lands a job at a local sticker factory where he is much appreciated by his co-workers. While holding down the job, paying off his debts, things seem to be looking up for Joost. Joost and Jan, father and son, don't live alone in their home in Alphen aan den Rijn. They are accompanied by a man of Chinese descent by the name of Long Long Ji. Long Long was born on the 10th of November 1976. He was raised on a farm in a rural area of China. As a child, he was described as being stubborn, rarely listening to his parents. Long Long was an outcast at his school, resulting in him being bullied. This made him a bit of a loner. When he enters high school, he decides he is not to be messed with anymore. He ends up in a few minor altercations with his classmates, which ended up in him being expelled from school at the age of 17. He then travels to Beijing and wants to pursue a future in theater, which is why he attends drama classes. Eventually, he would never finish the program. After passing his exam to become a massage therapist, he somehow ends up working in the sex work industry, trying to make ends meet, as you do. In Beijing, he gets acquainted with an unknown Dutchman, after which he decides to depart to the Netherlands to pursue a career in the sex industry. Out of fear of being deported back to China, he joins the Dutch branch of the Falun Gong movement. Falun Gong is a religious movement focused on meditation. Its members are being suppressed, systematically prosecuted, and supposedly tortured by the Chinese authorities. One night, during a night out with friends, Long Long meets Joost Vastenhouw, the father of Joost. It is then December 2003. A year later, the two would end up living together. Jan would later state, "If he were a Dutchman, I would have long thrown him out after our relationship ended. But if he were to be sent back to China, he would have certainly been tortured due to his ties with Falun Gong. I also vouched for him financially, so I thought it would be a good idea to keep an eye on him, which was a lot easier to do if he didn't have to move out." In June 2006, Long Long's mental health is declining, later stating in court, "I've been doing Falun Gong practices for 3 years, but now, all of a sudden, I can communicate with ghosts, otherworldly entities and dragons. My divine third eye is opened. Jesus, Jehovah, all gods are visible to me." Back to Tuesday, October 3rd, 2006. At around 8 o'clock in the morning, Jan leaves his home to go to work. At the time, Jan thought that his son Joost was still asleep, as well as Long Long. However, he fails to notice that whilst leaving home to go to the bus station, he's being followed by Long Long. Only when Long Long sees the bus Jan is taking leaving, Long Long turns around and walks back home. Upon arrival, he sees Joost behind his desktop in the living room. Long Long proceeds to walk straight to his bedroom, where he had hidden an axe from the shed the night before. He quietly walks back down the stairs and, without making a sound, sneaks up behind Joost, who is still browsing the internet on his desktop, fully unaware of the sheer terror that awaits him. Long Long then raises the axe above Joost's head and, without hesitation, plunges the axe down on Joost's skull. It was not hard enough to end the life of Joost immediately. Joost starts screaming at the top of his lungs in a desperate attempt to save his life. "No, don't do it," he would scream, right before Long Long raises the axe for a second time, plunging it in Joost's skull yet again. 6 more devastating blows to the head follow. And then there is silence. Long Long drags Joost to the bathroom, where he continues hammering down on Joost, his now lifeless body. After a while, he leaves Joost behind in the bathroom and hops on his bicycle to the nearest mall. He buys 2 smaller but sharper cleavers. He also buys a black fabric paint to conceal the blood stains on his clothing. When he arrives back home, he begins chopping up and sawing Joost's body into smaller pieces. In the kitchen, he has already stockpiled several gallons of sunflower oil, a roll of extra thick trash bags, 3 large woks, and a deep frying pan. Long Long then proceeds to do the unthinkable and tosses parts of Joost in several of the pans and fries them, after which he disposes of them in the trash bags. While frying parts of Joost's body, Long Long sustains an injury on his hand, due to boiling hot oil landing on his hands as he frantically walks his victim. This continues up until 3 o'clock in the afternoon, after which he starts cleaning the whole house, attempting to conceal his heinous crime. By the time Jan arrives back home at around 11 o'clock that night, the house has been cleaned thoroughly by Long Long. A few of the trash bags filled with body parts of Joost were already dumped by Long Long in an underground trash container. The rest of Joost's body was hidden in Long Long's wardrobe. Jan, wholly unaware of the horrendous fate of his son, walks to his bedroom and falls asleep. Joost often comes home late from hanging around with friends, Jan later stated. When Jan leaves for work again the next day, Long Long picked up right where he left off, chopping, walking, and cleaning. But right when Long Long wants to dump the trash bags, he notices a recycle logo on the underground trash containers. Immediately, he starts panicking. What if someone were to discover these trash bags? He runs back to the home, grabs a screwdriver, and uses it to open the underground trash container, and uses the kitchen stairs to lower himself down into the underground trash container. He is shocked to find that the trash bags that he dumped there the day before are now gone. Unbeknownst to him, they were already incinerated by the local waste processing company. After Jan comes home from work that day, he relaxes by chatting with some of his friends online. In the meantime, Long Long sneaks out of the house via the window with the final batch of trash bags. He hops on his bicycle, and while swerving and swaying due to the weight of the trash bags, he stops at a creek, dumps the contents of the trash bags in various places along the creek, and watches as the fried remains of Joost submerge into the water. I don't think Long Long hated Joost, I really don't. They know of each other's political views and discussed it openly. Lately, however, he was indulging more and more into the teachings of Falun Gong. He locked himself in his room for up to 6 hours on end, and he also listened to religious speeches on his Walkman continuously. 2 days after the murder, Jan files a missing persons report at the local police department. Later at home, he also voices his suspicion towards Long Long, later stating, "I saw the burn on his hand and the oil stains in the kitchen. I told him, Long Long, I'm going to investigate you, because boy, I don't trust you for one bit." His response shocked me, as he just stood there, not saying anything. I knew then and there that something terrible must have happened to Joost. Any normal person would be furious when being accused of having involvement with someone's disappearance, but he just stood there and said nothing. Not long after, Long Long was taken into custody by the authorities. The evidence against him continued to pile up in the form of witness testimony: the purchased cleavers he hid in his room, the kitchen stairs that remained stuck down in the underground trash container, his money withdrawals, the fact that he had called in sick for work, and the numerous blood spatters found in their home. Even though Long Long denies all accusations and any involvement into the disappearance of Joost, after more than half a year later, he confesses to the murder of Joost Vastenhouw to a psychologist in the Forensic Psychiatric Observation Clinic where he was held at the time. He later leads investigators to the creek where he dumped the remains of Joost's body. The Dutch Forensic Institute dredged the entire creek to find 43 body parts belonging to Joost. Police reports provide a stunning insight into the mind of Long Long the days leading up to the murder. He told the court that the gods had told him to kill Joost. Joost, his supposed spiritual master, and Long Long's spiritual master were in a fight in another dimension. A debt from a past life some 500 years ago had to be settled, according to the highly deranged Long Long. For over 4 days, Long Long asks the voices in his head whether he understood them correctly. The voices answered that he was correct in his assumption. I didn't have any quarrels with Joost. It just so happened to be that our gods were at odds with each other. I had no choice. Joost just had to die. The cooking and frying was merely the last step to silence the gods of Joost, according to Long Long. I could have also just burned him. However, I saw no opportunity to do so. Jan later told reporters, "My thoughts were that they must have gotten into some kind of argument, which then escalated. I know this sounds strange, but when I heard Long Long's explanation for his deeds, I understood immediately. He, meaning Long Long, frequently told me about Joost, his supposed master, but I thought he meant Hitler with that, due to Joost his political interests. I really didn't know what was going on in his mind." Somewhere in 2006, within the local detention center where Long Long is placed, a quail from the bird cage in the detention center's garden suddenly disappeared. Feathers were found on Long Long's flip-flops, prompting the guards to immediately inspect his cell. In his cell, they find the little bird in the water reservoir of his kettle. It was dead, its head severed from its body. This bird was possessed by an evil spirit, Long Long claimed. Initially, Long Long was sentenced to an indefinite stay in a detention center for the criminally insane. However, later the court decided that he was to be sent back to China, so that the treatment for his mental illness might work better, or something like that. I couldn't find any new info about Long Long, but John stated in an interview that he thinks Long Long may be killed due to his ties to Falun Gong, but who knows, right? If you enjoyed this content, please be sure to hit the like button, and I really would appreciate it if you would subscribe to the channel. Let me know in the comments down below what you thought about Long Long and his evil ways. If you have any suggestions on cases I should investigate, ideally cases that aren't from the US since YouTube is pretty much saturated with those, please let me know in the comments down below as well. Don't forget to follow me on all social platforms, and I again thank you for watching.